Lena Harrow's disappearance wasn't the beginning, it was the moment Riverside Hollow realized someone had been studying them for years. Evan Mire lived in the shadows for over a decade before anyone knew his name, but his presence was felt long before his crimes were discovered. Lena Harrow vanished in broad daylight, leaving behind only a spinning bicycle and the first clue in a decade-long nightmare. Evan Mire watched his victims long before choosing them, and Lena Harrow was the one who finally exposed his hidden world. Lena Harrow's abandoned bicycle marked the moment when the quiet town uncovered the disturbing trail left by Evan Mire. Evan Mire blended into the darkness so perfectly that by the time Lena Harrow disappeared, he had already mapped out half the town's lives. Lena Harrow never knew she was being watched, and Evan Mire never expected her disappearance to expose everything he'd built. Evan Mire spent years hiding underground, but it took the vanishing of Lena Harrow to bring his chilling obsession to light. In 2014, the peaceful town of Riverside Hollow sat quietly between long fields, narrow roads, and small clusters of houses that looked almost identical. People left their doors unlocked, children played freely outside, and the community believed nothing truly dangerous could ever happen there. That confidence disappeared the morning 23-year-old Lena Harrow was reported missing. Lena was known for her calm nature and predictable routine. Every morning, she rode her bicycle to the small art studio where she worked. She followed the same route, passed the same houses, and waved to the same neighbors. On the day she vanished, nothing appeared unusual until her bicycle was discovered lying on its side at the edge of a suburban road. The back wheel was still turning slowly when a resident found it, as if it had been dropped only moments earlier. Her bag was attached to the handlebars, untouched, and her phone remained inside the front pocket. There were no signs of a struggle, no marks on the pavement, and no footprints nearby. It looked as though she had simply been lifted out of her routine and removed from the world without leaving a trace. This sudden, unexplained disappearance hit the town harder than anyone expected. As the hours passed, neighbors gathered in small groups, whispering theories while trying to understand how someone could vanish in such a quiet place. Volunteers searched the nearby woods, officers walked along every path, and drones scanned the open fields. Nothing gave them a clue. The longer Lena remained missing, the more the town's familiar comfort began to fade. People who once felt safe walking alone began locking their doors early. The silence of Riverside Hollow no longer felt peaceful. Instead, it carried an uneasy feeling, as though something hidden had been living there all along, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. 3 days after Lena's disappearance, the investigation took a dark turn when officers searching the outer woods discovered a small, weathered storage shed hidden behind overgrown branches. The structure looked abandoned at first glance, with peeling paint, a sagging roof, and a rusted padlock barely hanging on. However, the disturbed soil around the door suggested someone had entered recently. Inside, the air was cold and stale, carrying a heavy smell of damp wood and old smoke. The shed was dim, but what the officers found inside changed the nature of the case instantly. Scattered across a narrow workbench were scraps of clothing, each piece burned at the edges as if someone had tried to destroy them but never finished the job. A small metal container held ashes mixed with half-charred paper, later identified as pages from notebooks. The surviving corners showed handwriting, short entries, odd sketches, and numbers written in jagged strokes. The most disturbing discovery sat in a cracked plastic crate, a stack of photographs, each image showing someone from Riverside Hollow. Some were smiling in front yards, others walking their dogs, and a few standing at grocery store entrances. Nothing appeared threatening at first glance until investigators recognized several faces belonging to individuals who had gone missing over the past 5 years. Every photograph had been marked with a date and a small number written in red ink. The earliest dated photo belonged to a mail carrier who vanished in 2009. Another showed a high school teacher whose disappearance had remained unsolved. Until this moment, no one had connected these cases. The realization spread quickly among the investigative team: these were not isolated events. Someone had been selecting people, watching them, and documenting them in a meticulous, unsettling way. The shed did not answer any questions about Lena, but it revealed something far more horrifying. While investigators searched the shed for more clues, another team examined the surrounding woods for anything that might explain how the place had been used. It was during this sweep that an officer noticed something unusual on the forest floor: footprints, not fresh but still clear enough to study. They didn't follow a straight path. Instead, they looped, circled, and doubled back in odd patterns, as if the person had been pacing or watching from different angles. The tracks were uneven, suggesting the individual stood in the same spots repeatedly for long periods. It looked less like someone passing through and more like someone studying the area carefully. Samples of soil pressed into the footprints were collected and sent for testing. When the results came back, the team was surprised. Mixed with the natural dirt of the woods were small particles of limestone and coal dust. These materials weren't common in Riverside Hollow, and there were no active construction sites that could explain their presence. The mixture pointed to one specific place outside town limits, an abandoned mining site that had been closed for decades. Investigators followed this lead immediately. The mine sat beyond a stretch of farmland and was largely forgotten by residents. Its entrance was partially collapsed, and warning signs hung crookedly on rusted metal poles. Despite the area's dangerous condition, there were fresh signs of activity. Footprints matched the ones found in the woods. Bent grass and cleared debris indicated recent passage. Inside the mine's outer chambers, search teams discovered discarded food wrappers, plastic bottles, and a pile of thin blankets pushed against a wall, showing someone had been staying there for some time. A folded map lay beneath a rock near the blankets. When opened, it revealed hand-drawn routes connecting different parts of Riverside Hollow. Several locations were marked with red pins, places where people had previously gone missing. Reports of strange sightings began spreading through Riverside Hollow as the investigation deepened. It started with a single description from a resident who claimed to have seen a tall figure standing near a row of houses late at night. At first, the report seemed vague and likely exaggerated, but soon more people came forward with similar accounts. Witnesses described a person who moved slowly, almost silently, keeping to the darkest parts of the streets. The figure never approached anyone directly. Instead, it stayed just far enough away to remain partly hidden, as though observing rather than passing through. These sightings always happened in the same pattern, late at night, on quiet streets, usually near the homes of individuals who later turned out to have some connection to the missing cases. The timing was too consistent to ignore. Some residents said they noticed the figure watching from between parked cars, while others claimed they saw it standing under streetlights but facing away from them, as if listening instead of looking. The reports grew more frequent as fear slowly spread across the town. In response, investigators set up hidden motion-triggered cameras across several neighborhoods. The devices were placed behind fences, inside unmarked cars, and among bushes where they blended easily into the environment. For days, the cameras recorded nothing unusual, and some officers began to suspect the sightings were nothing more than panic-driven illusions. Then, one camera captured an image that changed everything. In a blurry frame taken just after midnight, a tall silhouette stood completely still outside Lena Harrow's house. The figure didn't move for nearly 30 minutes, remaining fixed in the same position as though waiting for something. The image quality was too poor to reveal any facial features or clothing details, but the posture and presence matched every witness account. It confirmed that someone had indeed been watching her days before. A full search of the abandoned mining site continued for hours before investigators discovered something far more disturbing than the outer camps. Deep inside one of the narrow tunnels, a section of the wall sounded hollow when tapped. After clearing away loose rocks, officers uncovered a false wooden panel camouflaged to blend with the stone. Behind it was a narrow passage barely wide enough for a single person to enter. The air inside was colder, and the light from their flashlights revealed dust drifting through the enclosed space. The passage led downward, twisting sharply until it opened into a cramped underground room. The room contained almost nothing at first glance. A thin, worn mattress lay against the back wall, its fabric stained and flattened from long-term use. A small lantern sat beside it, coated in soot from repeated lighting. In one corner stood a metal shelf filled with notebooks. Each notebook was carefully labeled with dates stretching back more than a decade. Their pages held lists of movements, routines, habits, and timelines of different people from Riverside Hollow. The unsettling part was that none of the entries used names. Instead, each person was identified by a number, numbers that matched the ones written on the photographs discovered in the shed. The notes were disturbingly detailed. They tracked the time people left their homes, the duration of their errands, the paths they walked, and the days when they were most alone. Pages contained crude hand-drawn maps of streets and properties, each marked with colored symbols. These markings aligned with specific dates, indicating moments when the watcher had followed someone more closely than usual. On a small table near the entrance lay the most recent journal, left open as if abandoned in a hurry. Its final entry was dated the day before Lena Harrow vanished. The sentence written there was short but chilling: "The next one must be chosen with precision." It suggested a deliberate select. Investigators examined every object found in the underground room, hoping to uncover something that could identify the person behind the careful surveillance. A damaged laptop, half covered in dust, became the most promising clue. Its screen was cracked, and several keys were missing, but technicians managed to extract fragments of data from the hard drive. The files revealed old university records, incomplete research notes, and digital maps of Riverside Hollow. The username on the device matched a former geology student named Evan Mire, someone who had lived in the town years earlier before disappearing abruptly from public life. Further investigation into Evan's past revealed a lonely, isolated individual who rarely spoke to classmates and preferred spending time studying rock formations and old mining structures. After his father passed away, Evan withdrew even further, eventually dropping out of university and severing contact with the few people he knew. His departure from town had been so quiet that most residents barely remembered him. No one had considered him a threat, and no one knew where he went after leaving Riverside Hollow. Detectives traced Evan's activity through scattered employment records. He had taken low-profile jobs, mostly night shifts in places where he could work without drawing attention. One workplace, an industrial plant outside the county, confirmed he had been employed under a false last name. He worked alone, maintained equipment, and left before daylight. This schedule allowed him to move between the plant and the abandoned mine without anyone noticing. Investigators also discovered that Evan had signed into several online forums dedicated to wilderness mapping and urban exploration. His posts were meticulous, focusing on remote spaces, escape routes, and underground structures. While none of his messages mentioned Riverside Hollow directly, the patterns matched the detailed planning found in the journals. The search for Evan Mire escalated into one of the largest operations Riverside Hollow had ever seen. Police, trained tracking teams, and state investigators spread across the town and its outskirts, determined to find where he had gone after abandoning the underground room. Every abandoned building, wooded trail, and forgotten structure within several miles was checked. Officers followed the faintest signs: broken twigs, disturbed soil, and scattered debris that hinted someone had moved quickly and recently. Despite the intensity of the search, Evan always seemed one step ahead, leaving barely enough evidence to confirm they were following the right path. A breakthrough came when a team surveying the lower forest area discovered impressions near a drainage ditch. The tracks matched Evan's shoe size and tread pattern identified earlier in the investigation. The prints led to a large storm drain entrance partially hidden by thick brush. The grate covering it showed fresh scratch marks, and inside, the air smelled of rust and stagnant water. Investigators proceeded slowly, aware that the tunnels beneath the town formed a maze of narrow passages and unexpected drops. Flashlights illuminated the damp concrete as the team moved deeper. After several minutes, they reached a wider chamber and found something that forced them to halt. A rusted cage sat in the center, secured with a chain. Inside was Lena Harrow, weak, dehydrated, and terrified but still alive. She had been trapped there for days, unaware of the search happening above ground. Emergency crews rushed her out of the tunnels while investigators examined the area for clues. A small pile of belongings lay near the cage: food packaging, water containers, and a notebook with torn pages. What stood out most was a handwritten note placed on top. It contained only 3 words: "You found one." The message confirmed their worst fear: Lena was not the only victim Evan had targeted, and he had likely left others hidden. The weeks following Lena Harrow's rescue brought no sense of closure to Riverside Hollow. Instead, the town settled into a deeper fear as investigators continued searching for any trace of Evan Mire. Teams combed through wooded areas, riverbanks, abandoned farmhouses, and the endless stretch of tunnels beneath the town. Every lead brought them close, but never close enough. It was as if Evan understood the land better than anyone, slipping through hidden paths and forgotten spaces the moment officers approached. Reports of distant footsteps, rustling branches, and faint movements in the trees poured in from residents, but each sighting ended with nothing found. Evan had become a shadow the town could not escape. More abandoned sites slowly came to light. Small shelters built into hollowed trees, underground pits covered with boards, and makeshift observation points overlooking various neighborhoods painted a picture of someone who had been living alongside the community in silence. At some locations, investigators found notes similar to those in the underground room, short entries tracking people's routines. The writing style was identical, the numbering system the same. Some notes belonged to individuals who were still missing, while others detailed people who had never known they were being watched. Lena Harrow left Riverside Hollow shortly after recovering. The once familiar streets felt unbearable to her, and she refused to remain in a place where each corner carried a memory of terror. Her departure left the town with a sense of guilt and helplessness, a reminder of how close the tragedy had come to remaining undiscovered. Despite countless searches, interviews, and patrols, Evan was never captured. The case files grew thicker, filled with maps, sightings, and unconfirmed theories. Over time, the official investigation slowed, but the fear never faded. Many residents still claimed to see a tall figure lingering at the edge of the woods or standing near Isola.